Hello and welcome back to my channel. I have been really excited to share how I made this bowl of nachos cake. I had so much fun with this one, everything is totally edible, and here is how you can make one too. I made the tortilla chips first since I wanted those to dry and harden. I took a piece of my chocolate fondant and a piece of my regular fondant and kneaded those together to make this beige color. Then I added a little bit of yellow to give it that tortilla chip color, just like this. You can find both my easy fondant recipes on my website and on my channel here. Once I was happy with the color, I rolled it out with some cornstarch to prevent it from sticking. I rolled it out pretty thinly here. Here's what the thickness looked like roughly. Then I took a texture tool and just poked a bunch of holes, little small holes like this, and also larger holes using the corner of the tool as well, to look kind of bumpy like tortilla chips here. Then you could certainly just cut out triangles freehand or with a pizza cutter, but I did have this triangle cutter set from my shop, custombakingbyaaron.com, that made the process much quicker. I used one of the smaller triangles from the set. I cut out a ton of triangles. I used up this fondant color I made, and I thought that I'd made a couple extra, but I did end up using all of them on the cake, so definitely make more than you feel you need. After I finished cutting out all my triangles, I laid them to dry in some different positions here on these foam mats. You could also use a towel or just something soft or bumpy. I just didn't want them on a hard, flat surface. I've pinched them and rolled them and curled them a little bit so they would dry in different positions to look like chips. And I'm sorry about the lighting in this clip here. I must have had cinematic chosen on my phone. I also like to use makeup sponge wedges to help things dry in different positions. Let the fondant chips dry at least overnight so they can dry hard. The next day, I made some edible brown paint using brown gel color, a little bit of vodka, and some brown edible petal dust, and I painted the little dots from the texture on the chips with the paint, and then I brushed some light brown petal dust around the edges. Brown shading made them look a little more realistic. Here is how the chips came out. Let all the paint and everything dry while you work on your cake here. I'm using a 2-layer 6-inch cake that was already crumb coated as I had used it for a previous project. But you could really use any size you wanted. I do like the 2-layer because it's not too tall. If you think of a bowl, they're usually more flat and low. I'm using a serrated knife to carve off pieces from the bottom to give it a tapered bowl look. This may take several passes, and I know it goes without saying, but please be careful and aware of where your fingers are. Once I was happy with the shape on the outside, I used a scoop just to carve out some of the top of the cake and hollow it out a little bit so that after we frost it and put the chips on, they won't be just sitting on top of a flat cake. They'll be in the cake a little bit, if that makes any sense. I chose this bright yellow from my buttercream to crumb coat and frost the cake. It's called Sunray by Sweets and Treats Boutique. I'm just spreading this all over the cake, starting with the top. And the top or the inside of the bowl doesn't need to be perfect, just so it's a little bit hollow for the chips. I do have more in-depth videos about carving, stacking, crumb coating, and frosting, but basically the crumb coat is just to trap all the crumbs from the inside so that it doesn't get into your outer decorating layer. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it does need to set up the shape of your cake. Once I had covered the cake with my yellow buttercream, I used a flexible scraper. You could also use a piece of food-safe plastic or acetate that is flexible to kind of smooth out the middle of the cake and also the sides. This technique kind of reminded me of pottery artists and how they create beautiful bowls and things like this. You can find my vanilla buttercream recipe both on my website and on my channel here, as well as cake and cupcake recipes, fondant, and more. Crumb-coated cake then goes into the fridge to chill for about a half an hour before applying the outer layer just like this. Crumb coat is cold and very firm to the touch, so the outer layer will go on nice and smooth. And this we do want to get quite smooth because it's supposed to look like a bowl. So spend some time, you may take several passes. Just like the crumb coat, once we have the outer layer covered with buttercream, we're going to use the same flexible scraper, or you can use an acetate sheet or a piece of food-safe plastic to get it nice and smooth. And this will take several passes to get smooth. After the sides have been smooth, I'm going to use my angled offset spatula to level the top. I'm just pulling any extra buttercream in toward the middle and then pulling it away just to give it a top edge. Now the frosted bowl cake will go back into the fridge while we work on our next part. I wanted to give the bowl a very smooth top edge as well as a decorative stripe around it, so I colored some fondant using the same Sunray Yellow to match the bowl, and I'm using my ribbon cutter to cut a thick strip of this. Next, I'm going to be doing the same thing but with red fondant, and this is going to be a fun decorative stripe around the bowl. Once the buttercream on the bowl cake is very cold and firm to the touch, I'm going to add the fondant strip around the top here. I find it does adhere well to the condensation of the cold buttercream. However, if you're having a hard time getting it to attach, you can add a little water underneath it. Trim off any excess in the back, and then we'll do the same thing with the red stripe. Now we have a cute little bowl to add our chips into. I gently was able to stick each chip into the buttercream on the top of the cake. However, if you would like to add some fresh buttercream to it to help it stick, you could certainly do that. And then just continue to arrange the chips in different positions around the cake to fill up the bowl. Once the top surface of the bowl is covered with chips, you can start just laying them on top of each other to look like the bowl is overflowing or full of chips. And now we need to make some nacho cheese for our chips. Ganache is a good option for drippy things like nacho cheese on a cake. I'm using an approximate ratio of 1 to 3 heavy cream to white chocolate chips. I'm adding in a few extra at the end just to thicken it up a little bit though. Heated up my cream in the microwave just until I could see bubbles before adding my chips. Making sure all the chips were covered, then I let it sit for 10 minutes and stirred till it was smooth. I started with a very light grayish color, then I added that Sunray Yellow again to make it look like cheese. I started by stirring in 1 drop to see how the color came out, and then I did add a 2nd drop as I wanted it a little bit brighter. Once I was happy with the color and the ganache, or the gaNacho cheese, had cooled down a little bit, I just used a shaping spoon to spoon it over the top of the nachos and kind of let it drip however it naturally would. Once our nachos were nice and cheesy, or ganache, I was able to add some sprinkles. This mix by Sweets and Treats Boutique is called Salsa Sombreros, and it had the cutest little candy avocados and peppers, and the colors were just perfect for nachos. From a distance it looks like tomatoes and peppers. I added these right onto the ganache before it was set so it would stick. I also decorated the red fondant stripe on my bowl to match with the same sprinkles. I brushed it with a little bit of water, then used my fingers to just press on the larger ones, and I used my sprinkle pen from Sweet Elizabeth to press on the smaller sprinkles. If you find this pen to be handy and you'd like to get one for yourself, I do have a discount code that I will put in the caption along with the link to find it. Once our bowl was finished, we of course needed to also have some salsa and some guac. I was able to make some buttercream using avocado and neon bright green gel color by Chef Master to make the guac color, and then I used super red and sunset orange by Chef Master to make the salsa color. These were just scooped into little dash bowls, and then we added some more of the matching sprinkles, of course. Here is how everything turned out with the cheese and the guac and the salsa. I was really happy with this. It was a really fun project, and I even let my kids eat the fondant chips when I was done. Thank you so much for watching.